Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm Vicki Goodman, and on behalf of the Friends of the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior at UCLA, the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital Board of Advisors, and Wow, the Wonder of Women, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Open Mind program with Beverlye Hyman Fead, author of Aging in High Heels, Living a Life with Passion, Hope, and Laughter. We are honored to have Beverlye here with us today, zooming in from her home in Montecito, California. We are also honored to have with us Dr. Karen Miller, health sciences clinical professor and clinical neuropsychologist at UCLA, who will join Beverlye for a lively, informative, and inspiring discussion on aging. Beverlye Hyman Fead is an author, speaker, and activist. She was diagnosed with metastatic stage 4 cancer 18 years ago and was given just 2 months to live. Since then, she has written 3 award-winning books: I Can Do This, Living with Cancer, Nana, What's Cancer, and Aging in High Heels, as well as produced an award-winning short documentary film and given a highly acclaimed TEDx talk entitled, "Isn't it about time we rethink aging?" At 86, she's still planning her future and inspiring people to change their perspective on aging, eagerly sharing her knowledge about wellness. In 2019, she received the Perennial Hero Award from the Alliance in Aging Research for her body of work. Dr. Karen Miller, in addition to being a health sciences clinical professor and clinical neuropsychologist at UCLA, is also the director of practicum training at the UCLA Medical Center and director of the memory care program at the UCLA Longevity Center, where she has been active in research for 3 decades and part of the leadership team of UCLA's Brain Boot Camp program. Her clinical and research career has focused on early detection of Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, and memory enhancement for age-related memory decline. We would like to thank both of our distinguished speakers for taking the time from their busy schedules to share their knowledge and expertise with us. Now, just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Today's program is being taped and will be available for viewing beginning tomorrow on our website, on our YouTube channel on our website, friendsofthesemelinstitute.org. There you will also find a library of videos from our past Open Mind programs, as well as a calendar of upcoming events, so be sure to check it out. Today's program will run for approximately 1 hour, with the last segment reserved for your questions. If you would like to ask a question of either Beverlye or Karen or both, please type it into the Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible during the time allotted. A quick reminder, the deadline for submissions for the Friends of Semel inaugural Open Mind Film Festival for high school students is March 11th. Due to popular demand, we're now accepting films from high school students from all over the country. Details also on our website or the Film Freeway website, and you'll find a link there on the Friends website. And lastly, and very excited to announce that our WOW 2021, The Wonder of Women Summit, will be held on May 13th at 5 p.m. It will be a 1-hour Zoom with Lisa Kudrow once again hosting the festivities with stars like Ava DuVernay, Dolly Parton, and UCLA rock star healthcare leaders, and many more, and People Magazine, our media partner. This is our only ticketed event of the year, and proceeds go to the Friends of Semel Research Scholar Program and the Resnick Board's Clinical Innovation Scholar Program, both that fund and support early career neuroscientists and clinicians at UCLA. We hope that you will all join us for what promises to be a very exciting and meaningful program. Watch our website and your email for details coming soon. And now let's all give a warm Zoom welcome to Beverlye Hyman Fead and Dr. Karen Miller. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicki, for that warm welcome. We are thrilled to be with our audience today, and it is my great pleasure to be with you, Beverlye, and for us to have a chance for you to share your insights and your wisdom with us today. While we work on our sound check, I want to thank Vicki and the Friends of the Simmel Institute for inviting both myself and Beverlye here today. Hi, Beverlye, it's nice to see you.
I'm so honored to be with you tonight. It's really an honor that they picked you as the person that should interview me. I feel very thrilled about it. And I too want to thank the Friends of the Simmel Institute, along with the Resnick Board and the #WOW and the Wendy Kelman and Vicki Goodman and the co-founder and co-chair of #WOW, Terry Hammermesh. I want to make sure I got everybody, and you, of course, Dr. Karen Miller. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Beverlye. It's wonderful to see you, and I think you and I are passionate about the same subjects, including successful aging. I want to tell you that I enjoyed reading your book, Aging in High Heels. It's such a fun title. And I have several favorite parts of the book, but I was wondering if we might start with one of my favorite parts was how you talked about the importance of celebrating every day. And I was wondering if you would share with us a little more of your wisdom and insight into the importance of how we live life to the fullest each day rather than waiting for just important events.
Well, I think most of that came from my family. My family were great believers. My mother and my father and my sisters were great believers in celebrating every day. And I got that from them. And because they all died so young, my grandmother, my mother, my two sisters died from cancer before they were 64. And my father died in his 70s, 74. I realized that you don't know what tomorrow is going to be. So instead of making today, oh, I wish it wasn't raining, or oh, I wish it wasn't so hot, or I wish this, just make it the best day you can and just enjoy everything about it that you can.
I love that advice, Beverlye, and it makes me think about some of the conversations you and I had earlier, just in terms of the importance of the choices that we make regarding our lifestyle.
Exactly.
Right? And how that actually can potentially influence our longevity. Do you want to share a little bit more about some of what you are currently reading and researching and believing in?
Well, one of the most exciting things that has happened to me is that I have been talking about wherever I go to speak, how important it is to exercise, how important it is to enjoy the day, how important it is to enjoy what you do for a living or find things that make you happy. But I had no scientific facts to back me up. I was just saying this from the people I met, the people that were 80 and looked 60. And I thought to myself, oh, they must not be doing anything that they have fun with or enjoy. And the people that I met that were 80 that looked 60, those were the people that were interested, curious, doing a project, excited about what they were doing. And then I discovered Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who had won a Nobel Prize for finding out that there is a cell in our body that we're born with that's about this side. And she won the Nobel Prize for it, by the way. And then she wrote a book with Dr. Alyssa Espel called the Telomeres Effect. And this cell is called a telomeres, and we're born with it at this size. And as we grow older, our telomeres shrink and unravel. Think of like a shoelace that just kind of unravels at the end. And she actually discovered that if we do things we enjoy, if we find a way to find happiness, that our telomeres can grow, which is such an exciting discovery. And so as you grow older, those people that are dancing and singing, and whether they're 80 or 90, I like to dance in the kitchen by myself while I'm cooking dinner. And those of us who have found that you have to make every day special, whether what your circumstances are or what disease you might have. And not all of us can sing and dance, and not all of us can get out of a wheelchair, but they can do crossword puzzles, or they can do knitting, or anything that gives them joy. Those telomeres can actually grow. And that's a very exciting discovery. I was thrilled, not only that she got the Nobel Prize, but that there is scientific fact to back up what doing something joyful means to our lives.
I love that summary, Beverlye, and I really enjoyed reviewing her book and her research as well. And I think it really speaks to, you know, our emphasis at UCLA, particularly where I'm at, UCLA Longevity Center, where we're really focused on lifestyle modifications, right? How can we best help ourselves? That it isn't just our genetics or our family history, but it's the fact that we can always be learning something new, and that novel stimulation impacts our brain in such a positive way, including regular exercise and good nutrition. And I really particularly thought the part you brought up was very important regarding happiness, right? So of course, being a clinical neuropsychologist, particularly an emphasis on the psychology part today, I'm thinking about how important it is that we promote our own happiness, right? And I noticed that in her research, she mentioned about relationships and how that's really key to promoting our happiness. So I'm glad you highlighted some of the most important aspects of her research, and hopefully that will encourage our audience, not only for their own personal choices, but also to look into it further in terms of just how they can promote their own lifestyle changes and longevity and such. And obviously you have led life well and long. So what's your trade secret to that?
Well, I just feel as though you have to keep going, and aging is just a continuation of who you are, and you can keep changing. You know, we have been given bonus years. My generation, I'm so proud of being part of this groundbreaking generation, because I feel as though we're the first generation to grow older and not old. We are.
Absolutely. In fact, our older adults are our fastest growing population.
That's
right?
right.
Which is actually ties right into my passion. When Vicki mentioned that I'm the director of practicum training, my goal is to expose every clinician to the importance of aging and how we can better serve this population in terms of, you know, clinical care across the spectrum for medicine. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I love that word, bonus years. That's fabulous. But actually, that actually brings me to another point, speaking of bonus years, because in your book, you're very forthcoming. You share the ups and downs, the roller coaster of the journey, right? And obviously you've come out on the good end of it. I can see that for my own two eyes. But, you know, one of the things you mentioned in your book was dealing with dark times and dark thoughts and what you called hidden thoughts. I thought that was an important word for it. And I was wondering, what kind of advice do you have for our audience and such? How do we move from those hidden thoughts to yet again another time of hope?
Well, I can't say, you know, we must admit that there's a lot about aging that isn't easy. And we all have to learn loss, how to take loss and what to do with loss. Not only loss of members of our family and of our friends, but loss of part of ourselves. Because as we grow older, we can't do what we used to do 10 and 20 years ago. One of the greatest things in my life for me was hiking to the tallest mountain. I
Mhm.
loved hiking and I loved tennis. And because of knee and hip, I can't do those things.
Yeah.
But I've learned how to come in the side door, and that's what we all need to know how to do, is to come in a side door. If I can't hike, now I walk along the beach, and that gives me great joy. And if I can't play tennis, I walk sometimes on the beach with my camera taking pictures of rocks, which I love to do. And and then there are those dark days where nothing you can say or do to yourself makes you happy. And I don't know how clinical this is and how proper this is, but what I do is I get into bed and with a bunch of magazines and maybe some dumb television, and I stay in bed for the whole day, and I wake up that next day just refreshed. And I feel, yes, I can take on the world again. But there are days, I would say once a month, where I just say, you know what? I don't want any more today. I'm getting into bed, and I do. And I don't feel guilty.
Beverly, I love that advice. And you and I didn't even talk about this in our previous conversation, but I have to say that sometimes I've told something very similar to my clinical patients is just take the whole day off, do something
Exactly.
that is just away from everyone else and just give yourself a break. And the way you described it really was very mindful. Do you know what I mean? You were taking the opportunity to say, I need to rest and rejuvenate myself. And the next day after that, I'll push restart, it sounds like.
It's true.
Yeah, for sure.
And forgive yourself for it.
Right. And also, I think what's really important, what you're sharing with us, is just giving yourself permission, right?
Yes.
I think that that's what I hear. I like that about coming in the side door. And along those lines, one of the things that I noticed in your book was you actually had a quote from Robert Frost. And I'll just read a portion of it. The quote you used in your book was, even for the past, that it will turn out to have been all right for what it was. And I thought this was a really important quote you included in the book because, I thought of it in terms of how do we guide younger generations as they particularly are reviewing maybe what they feel are mistakes they've made, or how do they make sense of their past and how do they go forth in a positive direction. Any advice along those lines for?
Well, first of all, that's one of my favorite quotes because Robert Frost was asked, do you have hope for the future? And he said, yes, and also for the past. And I'm going to paraphrase now because I don't exactly remember the exact words, but he said, for the person I was then, for who I was able to be, and what was available to me then. And the most wonderful thing to remember about that is that we were different people when we were 20. So if we thought we were rude to somebody or we did something that we're not proud of when we're 40 and when we're 60, let us not forget that we didn't know what we know now. And what we did, what we were able to do at the time, we did the best we could. And we must forgive ourselves. And I like to tell the generation coming up behind us that you're going to learn a lot as you grow older. When you're 20, you think you know everything. And then when you're 40, you realize, oh, I didn't know anything then. And when you're 60 and when you're 80, it's the same thing. Um, one of the wonderful things about being 86 is that you do have a lot of wisdom because you've lived a lot of different lives and you've made a lot of different mistakes. And I, for one, have forgiven everybody I was ever hurt by or mad at, and if I haven't, I'm still trying because they did the best that they could at the time that they knew what they knew. And I'm forgiving myself too.
And that forgiveness ties right back into the happiness that we were talking about earlier in
That's
terms
right.
of how we promote longevity for ourselves and those surrounding us. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just so curious. I like how you described it, the 20s, 40s, 60s, 80s. If you could, what would your 86-year-old self have told your 40-some-year-old self if that was a possibility?
The first thing I would tell myself is, if you don't take yourself seriously, nobody else will either.
Hmm, I like that.
I have a 22-year-old granddaughter, and I tell her that all the time. However, I don't need to, because she has tremendous self-confidence. That generation has tremendous self-confidence. And I don't think we as women in our 20s did when I grew up, which was in the 50s. We were taught to we were still in that generation where we were taught to not be too smart, not be too clever. Treat your husband, like he's a king. He's the one that brings home the bacon. Don't you go out for a career. Now, there were those unusual women, and I applaud them, that did go ahead and have confidence in themselves. But I wasn't one of them. And I didn't really gain that confidence, I would say, until my late 30s, 40s.
Hmm.
And it was a big awakening for me.
That's very important, though, I think, for all of us to reflect on, is confidence, right? And
Yeah.
yet, I think you're right. We see a difference across multiple generations in terms of confidence, and particularly, our freedom to pursue our passions and what we are interested in. So the way you reviewed that, and particularly in a timeline, was really interesting and very helpful. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
And switching gears, because I'm a clinical neuropsychologist. So one thing as neuropsychologists, we love lists, right? Right. We make lots of lists, either our to-do list, or when we are, in the assessment process, we have our test list. And you mentioned lists in your book. And one of the things that you talked about in regards to lists, and I think it ties right into sort of across the decades, as you just mentioned, is what we are willing to give up and what we're not willing to give up with age. And I was just wondering if you might highlight for us what is your sort of top favorites on those lists to give up and to not give up. And if maybe we could also talk about how does that actually shift, let's say from 50 to 70 or that sort of thing.
Oh, it shifts big time, Karen.
Okay.
First of all, I wasn't kidding when I wrote the books, Aging in High Heels. I didn't realize that my high heels were getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and how I wear them very seldom now. When I was in my 50s, 60s, 70s, I wore them all the time. But wearing high heels, to me, you don't have to have them on. What it means is that you walk into a room with confidence and you're saying, I'm relevant, I'm here, I have something to say, and I want to learn what you have to say. That's what wearing high heels means to me. It doesn't mean that you have to have on 6-inch heels. But as far as the lists go,
Yes.
what I could give up are things like five-stage dinners, tasting dinners, where it takes from 8 o'clock until 11:30, and you're sitting pairing wine with apricot souffle or something. That's not something I need to do anymore. I would rather have dinner in front of the television with my husband and my dog, or that's just me personally. I noticed that there's a place that we go to lunch all the time, and the last couple of times we've been there has been a woman sitting there, and I would say she was probably in her 70s, and she's always by herself and reading a book, and she looks like she's having the most wonderful time, just being by herself, reading a book and having a meal that she enjoys. And I enjoy doing that too. So it doesn't have to be with your husband or a dog, but what I'm saying is I don't want to take that much out of my life to have wine and a dinner. That I can take out of my life very easily. I can take out of my life friends that don't make me feel happy and don't make me feel good about myself. And that we just have maybe have had a relationship that was a habit. And at this stage of our lives, we weren't really feeding each other. And I can easily take that out of my life. I want to have, my circle has gotten smaller, but it's also truer. And
Mm,
those friends that I have or that have me, I feel as though it's a really true relationship.
that
And
makes sense. And you speak of this circle of family and friends, and I noticed on your list of things that we are not willing to give up is those true friends and certainly our family. Would you share a little more about family and the importance that has played for you?
well, my family, and when I talk about family, there are people, and I have had several friends along my lifetime that have not had family. They had no children, they had a husband, the husband died, they didn't have anybody else, and they made their own family. And that family to them is every bit as important as my family is to me. So there's all kinds of families. Um, my I have two children and a daughter-in-law and three mind-blowing grandchildren. And my husband has two children, and uh, and there he is now,
Right on cue.
right on cue. And they mean more to me every day of my life. Really, they just, the sound of their voice, the sound of their laughter, their arms around me, um, being with them, laughing with them is just heaven to me. It just means everything. And which is something I'd like to talk about because people my age, and then on television, they always refer to us, which drives me nuts, the elderly at risk,
Mm,
um, because of COVID. And
mhm,
I guess we are the elderly. We cannot see our kids and our family as much as the previous years, and
mhm,
it's or our friends.
mhm.
So it's very isolating, and aging is isolating in itself, as you know. We
Yes.
pull in, and so here we are stuck in our homes, and not everybody is feeling that well from aging. You have one thing or another, and you can't see your kids and you can't see your friends. It's very isolating and can be very depressing,
Mhm.
um, which has nothing to do with the list, by the way.
No, but I think we're on the right topic in terms of, I'm sure our audience, which I know is large and diverse today, is probably wondering, particularly with the aging process, how do we shelter at home and in place, and how do we take better care of ourselves when we aren't able to go out and about and do as many things that we have loved or enjoyed in the past, and maybe you have some advice along those lines as we think about, we've had less time spent with family, less time with friends, less time in our hobbies and travel, which I know was on one of the lists as well. So yeah, how do we do that, and continue to?
We have to keep thinking. We have to keep thinking of things that make us happy. It's all the same subject. It all goes back to how do we make ourselves happy?
Yeah.
Um, and and if we have a husband that we're living with, how do we make him happy, or how do we make us happy? And for me, I'm an avid reader,
Mhm,
so I love to read. I
mhm,
love Netflix. I
mhm.
read so much and watch so much Netflix that half of the time I can't figure out if the character I know is some from the book I just read or from the Netflix I just saw. But it keeps me busy and keeps me happy. And I set up a little studio in my dining room, and I'm doing some watercolors, and that makes me
Wonderful.
happy.
Well, keeping your mind active is obviously the clear choice. And I know on your list, you talk about not only the art, but also music that you enjoy. And one of the things that made me smile on the list that you said we will not give up is technology. And you talked about computers and cell phones. And that really made me smile. I have to tell you on a personal note, because my mother was sort of addicted to technology too. She was the first one to go from the flip phone to the Blackberry and the iPhone.
Wow.
And I think that is really speaks to the importance of novel stimulation. You know, some of the research that I've dedicated my career to at UCLA is focused on memory training. And I feel really fortunate because, you know, of course, we began looking at memory training and the importance of new learning within the classroom setting, right? Where we are with other people and we're learning these techniques and how to stay sharper. But then we had the opportunity to translate that to computers. And I think that ties right into your list and your interest in technology. And I think it's important for us to encourage our audience that no matter what kind of new learning they're interested in, if we are involved in novel stimulation, right? So that could be music, or that could be art, or that could be computers, or a memory training class. That's what's going to help keep us sharp, whether we are 40 or 80, right? Because the truth is aging starts early, and some people do it really well, like you, Beverlye. But for, you know, most of us, we have to be thinking, how do we get ahead of this curve? And what can we do to protect ourselves from, for example, cognitive decline, right? I think you and I both know that one of the worries that older adults have is developing a memory disorder, something like dementia. And so how do we stay sharp? And that's what I enjoyed about your list, because it really spoke to things we can do to help promote our cognitive health and our overall well-being. And I think that is key to living longer better.
Well, I think we all need to develop that certain, by the way, when I say that I'm a technology is on my list, I'm not good at it, but I feel as though I need it to live in the world today.
Yeah.
Because I write books and I write columns for the newspaper, and I write, you know, essays or things for Maria Shriver. And I need to be able to work a computer. I need to be able to work a cell phone. So I keep up, and I can't not keep up, I feel, because otherwise I'm just not keeping up with the world.
That's very important. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important that, you know, you share it in such a frank way, right? In terms of technology. Technology is actually pretty challenging for most people, right?
Very
Some people it comes very natural to, but the truth is most of us rely heavily on someone else to show us at least the first, if not the 10th time, right? And you know, to keep showing us and to keep us updated. So
have those people. I couldn't live without them.
absolutely. I'm sure your grandchildren are part of that group.
They are.
I know that the younger people, they take to the technology so quickly, and I love it when they want to impart their knowledge, right? So that's really exciting. For me, it was a big shift during the pandemic when we went from in-person evaluations at UCLA to telehealth. And I know that I relied on my young team of graduate students to help us make that shift really quickly so that we could meet the seniors in their home and still provide services to them very quickly as they were staying home and not coming for in-person evaluations. So technology is obviously key for all of us. That's for sure.
Not easy, but necessary.
Right, but it ties into the new learning. That's what I think is really is very key. Speaking of new learning, in regards to your hobbies, passions, and such, you know, what would you say in the past couple of years has been something new you took on?
Well, first of all, many, many years ago, I did some travel writing. And when I say many years ago, I mean like 50 years ago. and then I gave that up and I was painting for the last 50 years. And just when I was diagnosed with cancer, when I was 68 years old, is when I wrote my first book, I Can Do This, Living with Cancer. And then writing has been my thing ever since. And then I also got all excited with the rocks. We live in a beach community in Montecito, and I took up photography again and started taking pictures of these rocks that just fascinate me, which, Karen, you'll understand. I feel that old rocks have taught us, it teaches me that they're rained on, the wind beats them, the sand beats them, but they stand there and they withstand and they look beautiful and they're aging, and nothing gets them down. And
They're resilient.
they're resilient. And I relate that to aging and how we feel. We've been knocked down a million times. We've been given diagnoses. We've lost friends or family members, and we're still standing. And we go through aging with grace, and it's a lot to expect of a person, but we do it. And even these extra years, we do it, and we do it. I think we're doing it really well.
I appreciate you mentioning the cancer diagnosis, Beverlye, because I know that's something that you talk about in your book. And I know that, again, is, part of the sort of the journey and at times some of the roller coaster that you've gone through and survived and come out on the other end of it. And, as a clinical psychologist, I'm always interested in that resiliency and that part of the journey, because I think, from what you're describing tonight with us is part of that is really our own perception and our own viewpoint, right? How do we have the internal strength to continue the good fight, right? And to continue to try to promote ourselves forward. But I want to tie it back to the family and friends as well. So what would you say how did you rally? Not only yourself, but ask for help, or who rallied with you, and what kind of advice would we give to our audience? Because my guess is that there's probably a lot of people out there, maybe in similar circumstances, that are facing some type of illness or some type of, maybe a mental health struggle. How do we create that rally for ourselves?
Well, I think the first two things I would say to them that are very important. Number one, in the early stages of your diagnosis, get more than one diagnosis. Go to more than one doctor. And I went to, actually, it ended up my fourth and fifth doctor came up with the experimental treatment that saved my life. And it's a shot and a pill rather than going through extreme chemotherapy and extreme operation to reset my stomach. And all of it was extreme. And I was just in the right place at the right time with forward-thinking doctors. And it was the first time that doctors had come together from different hospitals. One, Charles Forscher from Cedars-Sinai, with Dr. Frederick Eilber from UCLA. And they came together and came up with this experimental treatment for me that worked. And I was on the edge of getting target therapy and hormone therapy. I was just very lucky to be in the right place in the right time with the right doctors. And the second thing I would say to people is to reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
Let people know you could use some help. Whether it's just to cheer you up, whether it's to bring a dinner over, whether it's to, so many people would say, can I light a candle for you? Yes, light a candle for me in your church, in your synagogue, wherever. I need all the prayers I can get. At that point, I didn't know if my experimental treatment was going to work. I had been told that I had 2 months to live. And one of the great things is I live in this small community of Montecito.
Mm-hmm.
And when the town heard that the news got around very quickly. My close friends and my husband and my children, they just rallied around amazingly. They were making juices for me. They were bringing up food from Nate and Al's delicatessen for me. They were just always around and cheering me on and taking me to doctor's appointments. And my husband was always there. My children were always there. It was a very uplifting experience in a very serious, could have been a very serious outcome, but it wasn't.
That's so helpful, and I really appreciate the combination of that in terms of seeking more professional, knowledge, expertise, second, third, fourth opinions. And then I really think that it's very important for all of us to be thinking about that it's okay to ask for more help from our family, our friends, our neighbors, and even strangers, right? Sometimes we are reluctant to ask for help, and yet it can make the biggest difference, whether we are facing something little or something as big as a diagnosis like cancer or something else. So that is really helpful in terms of our overall journey. I know we only have a minute or two left before Vicky's going to jump on. So I wanted to ask you one last thing, Beverlye, from your book. And maybe this is sort of personal, but I think this time together, we've been very personal. So one of the last quotes in your book is by Irma Bombeck, and it says, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say I used everything you gave me. And first of all, I think it goes without saying that you have certainly lived a life well lived, Beverlye, and you've used, obviously a lot of your talents. So what would you say to us in the audience in terms of, a life well lived?
In someone else's life well lived?
Yours.
Oh, mine. I would thank God for giving me determination to follow my interest rather than my talent, because I'm not sure I really have any talent. But I am sure I have determination. So I would thank him for that. And I'm absolutely sure I'd be in the middle of a project when I would be called up and I would say, oh, just 5 minutes more. I just have one more thing I want to do. And I want to feel that I'm always busy and always working on something that is exciting to me. But I would be very grateful for the life that I have lived.
That's beautiful. I love that word, determination. And I so appreciate my time with you, Beverlye, and the book that you have brought to us and shared your personal insights. And thank you again for just sharing who you are and the life you've lived. And we expect many more years and decades to come from you.
Thank you. Karen, you've been the most wonderful interviewer. You've made me feel as though we're just two close friends sitting in my living room having a cup of tea talking. And so I hope we've made the audience feel like that, but you've been able to make me feel so relaxed. I appreciate it. And I admire your work so much.
Thank you, Beverlye. And I wish I was sitting there on that beautiful couch with you. Maybe another time.
We will.
Well, and I want to thank you both for this stimulating, inspiring conversation. Beverlye, you have really helped us all have a high heel attitude.
Good.
And I am going to personally remember that every time I walk in a room, which hopefully we'll all get to walk in a room soon, with our high heel attitude and our gratitude and our hope and laughter, as you have talked about in your book. So thank you for the gift of the book and the gift of your words this evening. And Karen, your knowledge and expertise, you two are a wonderful pairing, and you could take this show on the road. We do have a lot of questions, and so I'd like to get started with those. There's a question here from Tony. If you could give some examples of novel stimulation. and if there are any apps which are helpful for seniors to use or for any of us to use.
I would be glad to take that question first, since that's what I've dedicated my career to at UCLA. So in terms of novel stimulation, what we're talking about is we're talking about learning something new. So it could be a new hobby, it could be a new game of skill, or it could be taking something more formal. Like at UCLA, we have several classes that are focused on memory training through the UCLA Longevity Center, but UCLA is also partnered with the undergraduates, and we have senior scholars. So you can actually take a class alongside the undergraduates and learn a new subject matter. Maybe you're interested in art history or electrical engineering, and you can audit that class with no tests, which is beautiful, and have the chance to learn something new. We don't want you to give up what you enjoy. So for example, if you're an expert at playing bridge, keep playing bridge, but maybe you want to learn to play chess or checkers and add in a new skill. In regards to an app or computer programs, there's several out there. And what you want to do is you want to look for one that would be appropriate for your interests, your skill level, but also particularly focused on what I call a whole brain workout. And what that involves is learning new information and testing your short-term memory, but also language skills, visual, spatial, attention skills. Because when we have a whole brain workout through whether it's an app or a computer program or memory training, then we are setting our goal on staying sharper longer.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Along those lines, there's a question about the so-called brain supplements. And we're seeing a lot of those vitamins for the brains, and wondered what your thoughts were on that, and how, they're certainly always in our Instagram feeds and anywhere you turn. How effective do you think they are? And is it something that, people that are, as we're aging, should be looking into, or is it a lot of hype?
Well, I think this is a really important question. Having been at UCLA for almost 30 years, I can tell you back in the day, there was a big focus on vitamin E, and then ginkgo became the it thing. And then, we have continued to recommend fish oil as a supplement. But the key to supplements, it's not a gimmick. It's not necessarily what you see on your Instagram or on TV, but it's really sitting down with your physician and asking what are the appropriate supplements for you. So a lot of physicians might be just recommending just a multivitamin, and that's all you need. But if you're deficient in any type of vitamin, then we're certainly going to be wanting to take a supplement. But I wouldn't get caught up in the gimmicks just yet of these different supplements, but rather it should be an individual conversation. And one of the key components to that is that on occasion, supplements might interact with your own prescribed medications. So you don't want to just start taking a bunch of supplements. You want to review this with your team of doctors. That's really key.
Thank you, Karen.
And Beverlye, I think.
Yes, please, Beverlye.
I also think a nutritionist plays a big part in this too, because not all of your general doctors will go along and say, oh, you don't really need anything. But you might want to go to a nutritionist and see what it is that they suggest.
That's great advice. I think that's very important to add on.
Very good advice. Beverlye, this question is for you from Randy. What steps did you take to make the transition from being a stay-at-home mom to writing a column and several books and a TEDx talk and a documentary?
It all started, I used to paint in one of the rooms of our house when my kids were growing up. I was a painter for many years. And so I was a stay-at-home mom. I would paint while they were at school. And then I had my first show, and that kind of led to, one thing led to another. And I had the great fortune of having a studio in Venice And for the first time, I saw women that were making money from what they love to do. And it was a big eye awakening for me. And I saw that, if you painted, you could have a show. If you wrote, you could write for a newspaper or a magazine. And so that just gave me, here again, determination to figure out how to do that. So I wrote for a travel magazine for a while, and I wrote for a golf magazine, believe it or not. And then I moved to Montecito, and I wrote my a second book with my granddaughter, Tessa Hammermesh, about Nana What's Cancer. And once I wrote a book, I realized that anybody can write a book. It's just a matter of sitting down and writing what you feel. I don't really think of myself as a writer. I think of myself as someone who wants to tell about my feelings. And that's how I do it. I write it down.
Well, you do it beautifully. So thank you. This is a comment, not a question, actually, for Beverlye, somebody that knows you. Anne says, thanks always to Beverlye for inspiring me 17 years ago on the cancer journey. Beverlye, I came to see you. You left a writer's workshop to talk to me. I will never forget and will always thank you. Yay on Charlie and Fred, our sarcoma mavens. Here's to passion, hope, and laughter. What a beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anne. And I do remember her. And I'm so happy she's still around and telling me about this. And one of my favorite things to do, and I tell everybody I know, if I'm talking to you and giving you inspiration, then you spread it on and you talk to the next person and let the next person tell them. And we can always give that leg up to the next person that's been diagnosed.
Pay it forward. That's beautiful, Beverlye.
Absolutely.
Kind
We
of
have a couple of questions here about from women that talk about women who are still struggling financially, or their families are. How does an average person or somebody that needs to work with real world challenges find the mindset to go on? And there's about 3 or 4 questions that bring these same sentiments up. And I'm wondering, and including reaching out usually causes people to step back. And I wonder if you could comment on that.
who would you like? I'd be happy to, but I think Karen might be the best one here.
Well, I think this is an important point, Vicki, and I'm really glad those women wrote in, because there are a lot of real world challenges, right? And we know that financial constraints is really a challenge, particularly for women, right? We know that women still earn less money and often hold more jobs in order to support their family. And then we're thinking about what if they're facing various challenges, whether it be in mental health, anxiety, depression, or maybe some type of physical or medical issues, either themselves or in their family members. And I appreciate the comment that they said about sometimes it makes people step back. And I could tie this to kind of what, Beverlye, you did share with us about family and friends and looking at our true circle, right? And so sometimes it only takes one good friend or family member that can make all the difference in the world, and being able to identify that person who can be our partner and be able to listen to us. Not everybody has the money or time for therapy. And so it's really about, where do we turn? And sometimes that's turning to one good friend, one good family member, or sometimes to, if you belong to a religious organization or some other type of group, there is, support. Lay counseling is just as important as professional counseling, to be able to give us support and such. Beverlye,
I'd like to tell a little story about that exact thing, but I also think that groups and counseling is really very important. Cancer groups are free at hospitals and at cancer organizations, and they're very important. I met a woman when I talked once at a cancer organization, and she had no money. She took the bus to chemotherapy by herself. She had to change buses. She lived in a room with her nephew at her sister's house, and she would take the bus back. She had to do all the paperwork herself. And what saved her is one day she decided to try painting, and she bought a canvas, a cheap canvas, a couple of cheap brushes, inexpensive brushes, and some paint. And when she'd come home from her chemotherapy, she would go into the garage of her sister's house and paint for an hour. And she said that was the most important thing she had ever done. And that's really a person that has no resources or no extra money or anything, but she found a way to make herself happy while she was going through this dreadful thing.
Beverlye, I think your answer is very important. You highlight two really critical things. Is one, most hospitals do have free resources that are focused on groups or mental health programs. And so that's really key for most people. They could reach out, especially we're so lucky living in a place like California, for example, where there are numerous hospitals. But if you live in a location where maybe it's more rural or there's less resources, is start with your local hospital and find out, because a lot of those are available for individuals no matter what status your means are. And then the second thing, Beverlye, you mentioned is just, this idea of choosing a hobby or an outlet. This really brings up mindfulness. And as you were speaking about the art, it made me also think about walking, right? So what we know, our latest research on exercise is just walking 15 minutes a day actually improves your overall longevity and mental health. And that doesn't cost anything. You don't have to belong to a fancy gym or have a fancy stationary bike at home. And some of us, like you, are walking along the beach, but we can also walk along a park or find a safe neighborhood. And that can actually help to clear our mind. And the beautiful thing about walking is, especially if you go the same place over and over, you begin to make friends even on the walk.
Exactly.
Especially if you're walking with a dog.
And you do make friends in these groups too. That's another way to connect with people in the groups. They're in the same position you are, and they become your friend.
Very true. But I do appreciate those questions, Vicki, from our audience, because it is really key for us to think about how do we reach a wide range of individuals and what their needs are.
Right, right. Very important. And I really appreciate all the people that wrote in. We have so many questions, and unfortunately we're out of time. But I'd like to end with a comment from Deborah. It says, "You are each so remarkable in your accomplishments and life experiences. I'm so grateful to hear your stories in your different stages of life. Thank you very much." I think that is a beautiful summary to an incredible hour with two incredible women who have inspired all of us. And thank you so much for sharing all your experiences and your knowledge. And it's been a really enlightening hour. So thank you, Beverlye. Thank you, Karen. We all have something to take home with us today and keep with us and inspire us.
Thank you, Vicki, for hosting us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our honor. And thank you to everybody who has Zoomed in. There were about 560 people on this Zoom today. And we look forward to seeing you at more Open Mind programs. And have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.